As Ukraine and Russia met once again in Istanbul, the battlefield tells a different story. Ukraine has launched its deepest drone strikes yet inside Russian territory, while Russia intensifies its strikes. Amid this escalation, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky presents a peace roadmap including a 30-day ceasefire and the exchange of detainees. The Kremlin, meanwhile, promised to present its demands only at the talks, while reiterating calls to address the root causes of the war. Will the Istanbul talks be a step toward bringing peace, or there will be no resolution for the 3-year war? Welcome to In Depth. The New York Times has reported that Russia and Ukraine are set to hold a second round of peace talks in Istanbul, even as fighting on the ground escalates. According to the New York Times, both sides remain far apart in their demands, with Russia launching its fastest military advance since last fall and Ukraine striking targets deep inside Russian territory. The renewed negotiations come under pressure from US President Donald Trump, who has pushed both sides to engage, though expectations for real progress are very low. Kyiv is seeking a ceasefire as a first step, proposing internationally monitored pauses in fighting across land, sea and air. Moscow, however, insists on addressing the root causes of the war, including NATO's expansion and recognition of Russian territorial claims. Istanbul meeting, like the one in May, is expected to be technical in nature, led by mid-level officials and unlikely to yield a breakthrough beyond minor agreements, according to the newspaper.
In another diplomatic attempt to end the Russia-Ukraine war, the two sides are scheduled to meet in Istanbul for the second time. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has confirmed the defense minister will lead Ukraine's delegation and that Ukraine will present a roadmap for a long-term settlement to end the war, now in its third year. The plan includes a 30-day ceasefire, a mutual return of detainees, and the return of Ukrainian children taken to Russian-controlled territories. A possible face-to-face meeting between Zelensky and Putin would follow if the ceasefire holds. The last round of talks in Istanbul held last month did not yield results with the ceasefire, but brought about the largest prisoner swap of the war. But diplomacy comes as the war intensifies. Over the weekend, Ukraine completed its biggest long-range attack of the war, with using smuggled drones to launch a series of major strikes on 40 Russian warplanes at 4 military bases. Zelensky praised the results of the operation, saying that he is doing everything to make Russia feel the need to end this war. As both sides prepare for another round of talks, the world watches as hopes for peace collide with the grim reality of war on the ground.
And for more analysis, we are joined from Cairo by Dr. Mohammed Osman, International Relations Specialist, and from Kyiv by Ivan Os, Advisor at Ukraine National Center. A very warm welcome to In Depth, and we start off with Mr. Osman. Mr. Osman, the latest Ukrainian attack on Russian planes was described as audacious and a milestone year war. The goal time.
Always. And greetings to your honorable guest, Mr. Ivan Us, and to of course, the honorable audience. Ukraine carried out the most daring attack since the beginning of the war. Arguably, it was an incredible piece of special ops, of spycraft, whatever you call it. This special operation carried out by the Ukrainian intelligence managed to neutralize from 1/4 to 1/3 of Russia's fleet of strategic bombers. And for context, it has to be pointed out that only three countries in the world possess strategic heavy bombers. That is the United States, Russia, and China. So this highlights the fact that the Ukrainian special operation inside Russian territory was a very daring operation. It neutralized very high value targets with very simple means. So I think, and of course, the goal of this operation, in my
Dr.
view,
Osman, why did Ukraine take this step, and for what reason, in light of the round of talks that are taking place? We all know that these talks are not concrete and we do not know where we're going to end. Why did Ukraine do this?
Ukraine understands fully right now that it is negotiating with Russia from a disadvantageous position, meaning that they have, as Trump said, he told President Zelensky, you have the cards. So the US administration and the West in general, that he still has some cards that he can use in order to leverage his position in the negotiation with Russia. And the timing of the attack, even though according to Ukrainian sources it was being for the past 18 months, yet to be executed on the eve of the second round of negotiations, where both parties, the Ukrainians and the Russians, are supposed to present their framework, their proposed framework or for a ceasefire. And as we know, Russia has the battlefield initiative. All of the conditions geopolitically, internationally, and militarily on the ground do favor Russia at the moment, and therefore, of course, they negotiate from a very strong position, and they are in a position to dictate all of their terms. So what the Ukrainians wanted to do is partially diminish Russia's military capability and inflict some serious damage on Russia in order to entice it to be more serious about the negotiations and engage on a more logical and equal, or at least not that wide of a gap, footing between both sides. However, I don't think that this will deliver the desired results. Probably the attack will complicate the negotiating process, because Russia now is wounded. It has been humiliated again. It hardly recovered from the humiliation of the Kursk offensive by liberating Kursk, and it took them a few months to liberate their own territories. So now I think that the Russians will retaliate very harshly against the Ukrainians, and this will complicate and further diminish the chances of
Okay, got your point, Dr.
achieving,
Osman. I'll be
achieving
back
a
again.
breakthrough in the negotiations. Yes, go ahead,
Mr.
please.
Ross, the second round of talks in Istanbul have concluded barely an hour after they began. What concrete outcomes do you think Kyiv has achieved in this round of talks, and how is success defined from the Ukrainian side?
Greetings to you, Rana. Greetings to Mohammed Jasman. Of course, greetings to the audience for invitation. Actually, this round of talks, second round of talks in Istanbul for last period, as for me, have no serious target due to one reason. Because initially, even the first round of two, especially for one person, for one viewer, it's Donald Trump. Because Russia sure that they are winning this war. They don't need any talks, only capitulation of Ukraine. As for Ukraine understands that the only proposition that Russia can present to us is proposition of capitulation, or as their representative Medinsky said, that probably it will be a requirement for Ukrainian regions. Each of them Russia is not controlling at 100%, and of course a recognition of Crimea Peninsula, the only part of Ukraine that Russia controls at 100%, but they do that since 2014. It's not something new. Ukraine say no, that we don't want to recognize all those 5 Ukrainian territories as a Russia, and we don't want to limit our forces, our military forces. We don't want to stop foreign
Sir,
military
in light
aid.
of all what you're saying, how could you be saying this, or how is this your narrative? And the latest Ukrainian attack on the Russian planes and four military bases, which was described as audacious, sir. How do you read this, and how do you think why Ukraine is acting, or Zelensky, or whatever, in light of talks that are taking place on the ground now, and there's a second round of talks, which makes it even more difficult to reach a ceasefire or to stop this war at this point?
I had to say that it's make it more difficult. I absolutely agree with Mohammed Usman about the fact that attack on four Russian aerodromes demonstrated the fact that we have cards in our hands, because after a famous story of the Oval Office, after a scandal between President Zelensky and President Trump, when President Trump said that you have no cards in their hands, now you
Sir, do you
that
need cards now at this point, or do you need peace at this point?
For achieving peace in conditions that is interesting for you, you should have cards. Because in any other way, Russia can say that we can do that either by military way or by diplomatic way, that you surrender to us, and it economized your forces, you preserve your lives in your country. Your will not be murdered. But Ukraine said, guys, it's a war, and yes, you have some achievements, but on the other hand, we so can seriously harm you. And the situation
Got your point, Mr. Ross. I'll go to Mr. Ross. Drone strikes Ukraine is still. How do you interpret Ukraine's decision to engage in peace talks while simultaneously launching strategic drone strikes deep into Russian territory? And I think I just asked Mr. Austin a question.
I am inclined to agree, at least partially, with Mr. Uth with regards to the goal of Ukraine a daring attack, and that is to leverage their negotiating position and to negotiate from a position that is more stern, that is stronger, because, as Mr. Uth said, Russia's terms for a ceasefire and peace currently are nothing less than the full capitulation of Ukraine, and this is not reasonable. So I think that a compromise needs to be reached. But what I fear that the Ukrainian gamble could substantially backfire, because yes, Ukraine has demonstrated that it has cards, that it can inflict serious damage on Russia, but that doesn't alter the balance of power on the ground. And this will not buy Ukraine more support from the United States. If anything, probably the Trump administration are not very enthusiastic about this escalation, even though they will never oppose it. And maybe the US intelligence and other European intelligence services as well aided Ukraine in this very long operation that apparently was being planned since the time of the Biden administration. Yet at the same time, I don't think that Ukraine can bet that they will receive more US support, that they will reverse position, or that they will substantially weaken Russia's capabilities in this war. So the problem is that the Russian retaliation might complicate things. If Russia retaliates with the usual retaliations, a few missile attacks and a few drone attacks, and that's it, maybe then the negotiations can move forward on a more reasonable footing, because Ukraine essentially, of course, it wants to reclaim its territories, but it just can't. So now it will have to administer some sort of damage containment in the negotiations, meaning that they should not be forced, or they do not want to be forced, to withdraw voluntarily from more territories from the rest of the four oblasts, like Mr. Ivan just said, and this is what Russia demands, and also not to have any constraints on their military capabilities of this sort. But on the other hand,
Mr.
yes.
Osman, you mentioned, if I understood right, that possessing this type of ammunition is only the United States, Russia, and China. From where did Ukraine get this daring, incredible ammunition that it hit and attacked the Russian four planes and four military bases, sir?
I think it's the brilliance of the Ukrainian operation is in how simple it was, because it was actually carried out from inside Russia using very primitive drones. The Ukrainian intelligence, the SBU, infiltrated Russia over the past few months. They created cells and they used civilian trucks to deliver the drones to areas very close to these very strategic air bases. Some of them about 4,000 kilometers away from the Ukrainian border in Siberia, basically in no man's land. And then they launched these drones inside the trucks, those intelligence agents, and those drones hit a multitude of planes. Of course, Ukraine claims that what has been destroyed is 41 strategic bombers. Russia claims that only 9. Either way, it is a huge number, whether it's 9 or whether
Exactly,
it's
sir. Mr. Ross,
or whether it's 40. Yes, go ahead,
Mr.
please.
Ross, the proposed Ukrainian roadmap includes 30-day ceasefire and prisoner exchange. How do you evaluate this plan, especially that Russia has previously rejected the 30-day ceasefire proposal, not to mention, of course, that Ukraine is not looking for a ceasefire at this point, or is not seeking a ceasefire at this point?
Yes, sorry. Actually, attack on Russian airports and destruction, even I agree with Mohammed Osman, if it's 9 but not 41 bombers, it's actually a demonstration to Russia the fact that this 30 days truce interesting not only to Ukraine, it's interesting to Russia too, because when you sure that you have power, you don't think about opportunity even of 30 days truce. But after receiving this heat and receiving it inside Russia, what is most dangerous for Russia, that all those drones was in Russian territory, and it was a failure of Russian security, and knows where we have another deposits of those drones inside Russian territory, and when it goes through. And today it's military airports, and what could be the next moment, because you know that if you talk about the nuclear power and about 3 parts of nuclear weapons, it means the submarines, it means bombers, and from the land. So Ukraine entirely one thought that let's call it so nuclear direction. So probably it could be attack on the basis for submarines or something like that. That's why Russia received the argument why they should go on 30 days truce, because before yesterday Russia don't have arguments. So they understand why Ukraine needs this truce, but they don't understand this truth. Now
Mr.
they
Ross,
start.
You mentioned that, and you were okay with what Dr. Osman said, that Ukraine has its cards and it's using its cards at this point. Negotiations. What type of cards does Ukraine have to negotiate at this point? And if it does have this card, actually, what cards does it take to have this attack take place? And after this attack, how will these cards help, sir? It's going to make it even worse on the ground, on the battlefield. And is Ukraine actually ready for peace at this point after all that's taking place?
So, as I said before, we understand that Russia don't need this peace, don't need this 30 days truce, and they don't understand why they actually should go to this.
How could I want peace when I go and fight and hit Russian planes, sir? Russia is going to retaliate automatically. It doesn't need anybody to think.
The problem that Russia don't need peace. Russia don't understand what they need. Russia want to destroy Ukraine. They do that for more than 3 years. And these talks in Istanbul, as I said, not because Russia needs this talks, not because Ukraine needs.
Mr. Ross, of course, to every action there is an equal and opposite reaction, and Russia is supposedly is going to retaliate. But I'll go to Mr. Osman. Ukraine's proposal reportedly includes a 30-day ceasefire and the mutual return of detainees, sir. Do you see this roadmap as a serious basis for lasting peace, sir, in light, of course, of what we're watching and witnessing at this point?
Hypothetically, theoretically, from an abstract viewpoint, it is rather logical to call for a 30-day ceasefire and for a full prisoner exchange, exchanging developments. I do lean towards the idea that this will provoke Russia into actually being more violent and aggressive rather than being more flexible in the negotiation. I'm not trying to be hyperbolic, but Mr. Us just mentioned the nuclear trinity, the targeting of one of the three pillars of nuclear delivery in Russia. And this could provoke a very, very, very serious retaliation from the Russians. We do not want to see an Orychnik missile landing on a major Ukrainian city, for example, or God forbid the use of tactical nuclear warheads in eastern Ukraine. This will be a disaster because Russia now will have to salvage its reputation and its image after being humiliated in this manner, and so that they can reclaim their strong negotiating position. I'm not saying that Russia will do that. Hopefully they won't. Probably they won't. However, the Russians can be very unpredictable, and the very peculiar silence of Russian officials since the attacks of yesterday, the silence of President Putin, the silence of Dmitry Medvedev, the vice president of the Security Council, who always takes to X or Twitter to comment on anything. He did not say anything. All the Russian officials are in a state of shock, and probably they are preparing a retaliation. This retaliation will reveal to us whether the Ukrainian gamble did work, and that this will be just another retaliation and the Russians will be more reasonable in their negotiating positions, or whether the Russian retaliation will be outrageously disproportionate and will further complicate things and will cause substantial damage to. I hope that doesn't happen, but something tells me inside my gut that this is where we're heading, and this is what we will see in the next few days and weeks.
Okay, and now we move on to the live coverage of the talks that are taking place in Istanbul, of course, under the auspices of Istanbul and Turkey, as Ukraine and Russia prepare our meeting now. The battlefield tells the story. Let's move on and watch Ukrainian Defense Minister speaking and bring you more updates about the ongoing that are taking place.
In this room, States, we don't have the Europeans, and Ukraine continues to insist. Today, before going here to the meeting with the Russians, we met from Europe, and we will do the meeting with them after, just for them to keep them completely in agenda, as well as the Americans, because we believe it's important to have them in the scope. And the last one about the humanitarian, as my colleague said, we have a good progress here. I just wanted to touch base on what Minister announced as a very important step. Ukraine has passed the list of children to be returned. But it's very important to stress once again, children and detained civilians cannot be the subject of any exchanges, because according to Geneva Conventions and international practices, these people shall be released. They shall be brought back. So today, Ukraine passed a very big list of Ukrainian children with all the details, all the names, all the data necessary to identify them. We know where these children are, and we ask the Russians to fulfill their international obligations and to bring these kids back home to Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you, members of the delegation. I will stay with the press. We thank you. We'll let you make your further schedule, and I will stay with the press to answer some of the questions you have. So please, let's start with the first row, man. Yeah.
Yilmaz Akıncı from Al Jazeera. I would like to ask the next meeting, when it will be happening, as you suggested, 28, what's the Russian answer? Did you plan anything? And second of all, about ceasefire, you were keep insisting about ceasefire. Was there any result in the meeting about this? And I have a follow-up question, but just for now.
Okay, let's start with these ones. First, on the further process. As you heard, the members of the delegation document or the proposals they gave us, they presented, and then we will be ready in quite a short time, I think, to elaborate on the further process, because we need to start what's there, how active, how flexible this document and its positions are, to understand what's the next progress. Again, we think that further meetings make sense if they are made in the context of preparing a meeting of the leaders, because in Russia, Putin is the person who decides, and you need to actually make decisions on the ceasefire, on other crucial elements, and that's why we see this work as very important. And the second was on the ceasefire. What's the response? Look, we are ready since March 11th, as you know, for a full ceasefire. This is not our whim. This is not our invention. It's a very logical point that if you want to have real diplomacy, if you want to push forward the peace process, you need to have a ceasefire, because this is a confidence-building measure. So you can have diplomats speak when guns are silent. This is very logical and natural. Unfortunately, Russia keeps rejecting the ceasefire, unconditional ceasefire, and keeps putting forward various demands. This topic was a crucial one for our delegation today on this meeting, because we continue to insist that this is absolutely necessary. As to what are the Russian responses, I think you need to ask the Russian delegation. It would not be appropriate for me to speak for them. So please ask them. I encourage you to ask them what's their obstacles to having a ceasefire. In our view, the ceasefire is the basis for any diplomacy. A follow-up, and then...
Both sides escalating there was a text from Russian side to Kiev. Yesterday there was attack in Russia. It's not actually both sides.
We categorically reject any attempts to put Russia and Ukraine on the equal footing. First of all, Russia is the aggressor, and Ukraine is a country that is defending itself, and it's important to mention. Secondly, Ukraine only targets legitimate military targets inside Russia. Only legitimate military targets. And all of the international law allow Ukraine to do this. When Russia hits Ukraine's residential areas, kills children and civilians, this is not, we think this is not comparable. So yeah, we think the war goes on, yes, at this moment, you can all see that, but it's uncomparable, and it's, we think, inappropriate to compare. Let's go to the back rows. Yeah, the man there in the pink tie. Yes, you. Yeah.
Maxim from the Times. Just a question about the Russian document. I understand you only received it today, so it's too early for Ukraine to have a reaction, but can you elaborate a little more about what the contents are? We know that Russia has made some pretty consistent demands going back to June last year when Putin set them out, and more recently Lavrov and Medinsky have also put some things forward. Can you give us more of an idea of what the contents of the Russian memorandum are, just the facts of the document?
Yeah, Max, you need to understand that I will be very limited in what I can say, because as you said, we just received the document. If we have received it earlier, we would study it, and I would be ready to tell you now, okay, its points are acceptable, not acceptable, or what. What are they? You don't know what they are. We didn't know, look, Max, we didn't know what they are.
But can you tell us what they are?
Until 4 hours ago.
You know, your document is public.
This is the problem.
We just want to know what's in it.
We shared our document. We can speak for it. We shared it with the Russian side last week. And moreover, because you all probably read a lot of items of this document already in the press, this is how our world functions, that everything is in the press. But you can clearly see, I think even from these leaks, that our document is very rational. It's logical. It doesn't put forward any demands that are not doable, that are go beyond what is required for the normal peace process. I mean, clearly see this is a normal document, our document. Document, we need to have a look at it and be sure that we will provide evaluation when we are ready to do that. It would be irresponsible for me to improvise now and give assessments of this document. Again, we'll look into it, analyze it, and get back to you with more clear evaluations. Yes. No, sorry, I promised. Yes.
Marina Willinger from German public broadcaster ARD. My question would be, could you describe us a little bit about the atmosphere today that has been set up during these conversations? And my second question would be, do you think the future talks will be here in Istanbul on the role of the Turkish government, and what's your demand from European leaders? Thank you very much.
Okay, the first one, atmosphere. The atmosphere was different. The Ukrainian delegation, when it comes into the room with a Russian delegation, always ready for any types of statements coming from the Russian side. Believe we are prepared. We're first day in business. In talks with the Russians for many years, even before 2022, and we know the type of statements they can voice. What I can tell you for sure is that the Ukrainian delegation was bringing the issue and bringing the discussion back to the topics which are the priority for the Ukrainian delegation, which is the ceasefire, humanitarian confidence-building measures, the return of our prisoners of war, children, and then the meeting of the leaders. Because we think that this is the real points. We can talk for a long time about any, big issues, but in the end, the peace process starts with the basics, and the basics is the ceasefire, humanitarian confidence-building measures, and the meeting of the leaders, which can we never had any problems with any platforms. The Ukrainian side has always been very clear that we are ready to meet in Turkey, in the Holy See, in Switzerland. So there are many platforms. We don't have problems with the platforms. Unfortunately, it's the Russian side that wants to, pick platforms, dates, and so on and so forth. We, again, our delegation came here because we are committed to peace, because we will never allow anyone to accuse us that we are an obstacle to peace. We are not, and we use every opportunity, however small, to advance the process. As to the European leaders and what we expect unity in Europe, and we expect strengths. This is why, for example, Minister Sibiha was taking part in EU Foreign Ministers' Council recently. He was talking with his foreign minister's colleague. And President Zelensky, by the way, today, takes part in important formats with the European leaders. We insist that the pressure on Russia must be maintained and strengthened, even as the diplomatic and peace goes. It actually, pressure helps. Pressure actually stimulates active approach to the Moscow side. I would say this is the priority thing, but then it needs to come, the economic pressure on Russia needs to come together with military assistance for Ukraine. It needs to continue, and we need to continue strengthening Ukraine. Again, for Russia to negotiate and face and be serious, it needs to understand that it cannot give military victory or results. It needs to understand that Ukraine is strong enough, and we need to be in a strong position. Yes, let's go to the left side, you, and then behind the second row.
Thank you very much, Lisa Vogt from BBC. I wanted to ask you, during those talks, the Russian delegation mentioned the strikes on Russian air bases that happened yesterday, and do you think those strikes had any influence on the talks today whatsoever, maybe on the atmosphere in the room? Thank you very much.
Not to my knowledge, but I'll need to talk to the delegation. I only know some basic things they've been able to tell me when we came out of the room, because we immediately rushed to this press conference. I will talk to them on this, how the negotiations. I didn't hear it. I mean, the war goes on, and I can only reiterate that first, Ukraine targets legitimate military targets in Russia, and secondly, Ukraine agreed to a March 11. And if Russia agreed to a ceasefire, I guess the planes would be intact right now. Please, your colleague.
Thank you very much. From China's Xinhua News Agency. What do you think is today's biggest breakthrough for today's talk? Could you tell us the biggest breakthrough for today? Secondly is, could you tell us the details of the prisoners exchange for second time? Could you confirm the details of prisoner Russia, the second?
The discussion back to constructive and positive mood. The great outcome we think today is again on humanitarian issues, the same way as it was last time on May 10th, on the meeting in Istanbul, and the return of our people. So delegations, as you heard previously, the members of the delegation, they agreed to exchange all for all certain categories of prisoners of war, which are severely sick, severely wounded prisoners of war, young soldiers 18 to 25 years, the youth that needs to be home, not in captivity, and the return of the bodies of the fallen soldiers to let their relatives commemorate their loved ones. I think these humanitarian issues are very important for us. For Ukraine, there is, I'd say, no greater value than human lives, and if a meeting lets us bring back some people, any number, then we think it's already a success. It's already worth it. And it was the case back then when we had 1,000, 4,000, and it's the case now. Why we focused on specific categories, not this is important, all for all principles inside these categories, but this is important because we can release those who need this the most, and we think it's already a success. Yeah.
But you will also release the prisoners of Russia, right? So it's
yeah,
like
of course. We're
also
talking,
like the exchange.
Yes. We have the release. Yes, of course. We get back our people; they get back their people.
So there's a certain figure number you don't want to mention.
The teams will be working to elaborate on a specific. How many people there, and the figures will be made public.
But it will be more than last time.
It's hard to tell for me right now because, again, the work needs to be done by the teams to find out the number. And we're not, this time it's not about the numbers, it's about categories. So all of the prisoners of war who are severely sick and severely wounded need to be exchanged. To the left back there, and yes, to the colleague in, yes. And if some American media is here, because last American TV channel, let's start here, yes. Next, yes. Please.
You also mentioned that there was some discussion about a leaders' meeting. This obviously seems very unlikely, but how did the Russian side respond to this? Presumably they want the process to take place and some terms to be agreed on in advance, no?
Look, I understand that the Ukrainian side is pretty open in the communication with media, and we tell whatever we are asked for, and that's why I'm standing here and answering all of your questions, whatever they are. And I understand that the Russian side is not that open, and that's why you ask, like, you're not the first one to ask me what the Russian side thinks, what it responds. I cannot speak for them. I need to also understand that I cannot speak for them. I think that a president, so asking what they think.
Ukrainian once again in Istanbul, because they the 16th of May, to, of course, try to reach a ceasefire. Mentioned that the Ukrainians demand complete conditional ceasefire for at least 30 days. He also said that consistent and about for us as soon as we know more about it, and he wished he knew more about it. That was sitting, of course, in the conference more world proposals of the Russian sides, and of course, the Russian document would be. From his point of view, he said that it's irresponsible, and he promised to read, improvise, and let everyone know. And he will be irresponsible if he does not. Turkish, of course, government and what is taking place. Will it continue? When he was asked the Ukrainian delegation, he answered the Ukrainian delegation comes with Russian delegation, and the type of statements, of course, they reveal each and every time, mostly about a ceasefire, detainee exchange, which Ukrainian is asking for, and the exchange of the detainees is focused on categories, not the numbers of children or detainees that are going to be released, but the categories. They want soldiers, they want children, they want all different categories to be released. Strikes which took place, of course, have influence on, from his own perspective. This is what he just said in the press conference. Strikes have influence on talks today. He answered, not to my knowledge, but regarding today. He really thanked the, of course, person that asked him, or the media man, or that asked. He said this was the most constructive question that he was asked today, as it was leading to it for the first time, like since 16th of. They agreed to offer prisoners, young soldiers, and numbers of people as it's. And he, of course, criticized American media men and the press that blamed him last time for not answering their offered them questions, and actually when he they were not given enough platform, he answered and he said that the Ukrainian delegation our main target is a ceasefire. These were the words again of the Ukrainian defense minister, who is speaking in Istanbul, trying, of course, to achieve ceasefire. Anywhere, all over the world, wherever it takes, but a ceasefire. Thank you very much. And